Hello and welcome to this episode of the Housing Geospatial podcast, the podcast where we discuss anything and everything that relates to either housing or geospatial, preferably if there's a little bit of both. Housing Geospatial was formed as we believe place matters for social housing and that geospatial information is woefully underrepresented within the housing sector. This series is around sharing a collective knowledge for those within the housing sector. You can find us either on our group page on LinkedIn, or feel free to head on over to our website at www.housinggeospatial.co.uk. I'm your host, Chris Kinnear, and our guest for this podcast is the amazingly innovative Lynsey Darby, who is a GIS Specialist at Believe Housing and the GIS Lead at Shine. Hi, Lynsey. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Chris. No, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's great to be here.
So the first question we always ask is, how are you involved in housing and or geospatial?
Yeah, well, like I say, I am the GIS Specialist at Believe Housing, and I mainly manage and deploy the GIS, our corporate-wise GIS software, and I look after all of our geospatial data as well. Believe Housing are a large housing association in the northeast of England. We have about 18,500 properties, which are centred in and around County Durham. We have some which are slightly above and slightly below there. And alongside that, I have another hat. I'm also the GIS lead for Shine, which I won't go into too much detail about because I do have a feeling that might pop up later in the chat.
That is 100% going to be talking about later on because I love what you guys are doing at Shine. So you've had a really interesting career that led to you becoming the GIS specialist at Believe. Can you tell us a bit more about your career history?
Yeah, sure. I hope you're sitting comfortably. This may take a while. I've worked in the GIS geospatial sector for 25 years now, which is unbelievable. And I think I first kind of started using GIS while I was at university. I did a geography degree at university, so I have some kind of vague recollection of doing digital mapping there, but don't ask me what it was all about. I can't really remember that far back. But then one of my jobs really out of university, it was just the start of this millennium in January, this millennium, not the previous one, I'm not that old. And it was working for a small company in Sunderland, and we were doing ortho rectification of aerial photography. And that involved putting down ground control points on aerial photography and matching it up to features which were on the mapping. Then it would add the coordinates to that and you could produce seamless mosaics. And that was what we were doing. And I used to basically go home and in the evening fall asleep and dream about putting these ground control points down on the imagery. But it was good fun. And then I was there for about 3 years. Then after that, I moved on to what was then Transco, now National Grid. I moved into contracting and I was a GIS consultant for National Grid. It was supposed to be for 6 weeks and then that extended to 12 years, I think it was in the end. But I absolutely loved it. I used to say I was like a mobile GIS unit because I used to travel up and down the country with my laptop, a projector, and loads of external hard drives with all of the data on there. And I'd rock up at a site, where they were building the pipelines. And we'd be in a small porta cabin, and I'd sit there with the pipeline engineers, the archaeologists, the environmental consultants. And we'd all sit round a table looking at this projector on the wall, and we'd kind of like route massive long pipelines. Doing this just all sat in the office. Obviously, people would have to go out on site and check that things were right. But it was a great job and loved doing that. And like I say, I was there for about 12 years. Then moving on from there, I kind of left and realised up until that point I've been using Erdas Imagine GIS software. I don't know if that's one that you've come across or any of your listeners. It was a really good piece of kit, but I think it was kind of like National Grid and the Army were the main ones who were using it. And I thought, right, then I need to see what else is being used out there. And it turned out it was mainly Esri ArcGIS software that people were using. So I took it upon myself to do a short professional development course. And it was short. It was only something like 4 or 5 days at Newcastle Uni. And that basically was where I picked up the skills of how to use ArcPro. And then that kind of opened up the door. I was still contracting, and that opened up the door to lots of other sectors. So over the next few years, I worked for two local authorities in North Yorkshire, which that was a brilliant learning curve. I learned a lot about local plans. Local authorities tend to be doing them a lot, and also about online mapping. So that was the first time I'd really, sunk my teeth into that. And then I also had a really interesting stint for about 9 months at a renewables company in Northumberland. And they were using GIS to design onshore and offshore wind farms, which that really fed into my love of physical geography, because the data sets that we were using there was brilliant. It was like, bathymetry data, REX information, unexploded ordnance, UXO data, because, it's amazing what's on the seabed and what you have to avoid. So that was just fantastic. And then I gave up the contracting side of things, just kind of like thought, right, I've had enough of that. And a job came up at Believe Housing that I was really lucky to get. So I started working in housing in, I think it was about November 2021. And I've not looked back.
That's an awesome career, and I love all of that. And author rectification is a word I don't think I've heard in a very long time.
Yeah, thankfully it's not one I have to say very often.
Yeah, it's quite a long word, isn't it? But
it's
that's really cool when you get the aerial imagery and you've got to actually pinpoint it, and so you can create a smooth layer that people can use. So at Believe, you said it's quite a moderately sized housing association, but there was no GIS function.
No.
It's really incredible how you built that up. Can you tell our listeners kind of that step-by-step process that you took and how you built it up?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's really what attracted me to the role, being able to start something from scratch. Quite often I would go in as a contractor and then have to pick through somebody else's work, which, there's no problem with that, but it's sometimes quite hard and tricky to do. I was also very lucky that the senior management team were very on board with getting GIS. That made my job a whole lot easier. I appreciate it's not the same for everybody in different organisations. So I think it's easier to split it into 2 years, how I tackled the first year and then the second year. So the first year, it was mainly undergoing the tender and procurement process. I made sure I spoke to as many people as possible across the organisation just to ask what functionality they wanted from the software and what data that they thought that they might need to help them do the job. I didn't want to go in and just force on everybody what I thought that they should have. So when we went out to tender, we separated out into 2 lots, and it was quite a detailed tender that we were able to put out there. So lot 1 was for our software. I wanted to be able to have the functionality to deliver a corporate-wide solution. And then also the second lot was to do with data. So I knew that we wanted OS master map topography mapping, so that would be used as our base map for all of our maps. We also wanted OS address base. There's, a lot of valuable information you can get from that. And then a lot of people, when I first started, just were shouting at me, "Where's our trees?" And of course, I was like, I don't know. So I thought the good go-to for that would be Blue Sky's National Tree Map. That shows the location of trees which are above 3 meters in height. So I thought that's got to be a good place to start for that. And then the third data set that we got was the land registries, land ownership, boundary information, which I knew that would be vital moving forward. So we put that out, and it was Esri who had a very detailed bid, and they won the tender for that. So we went for their full suite of products, ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Online, and ArcGIS Enterprise. So the full suite, and they installed that, which was a pretty easy process, thankfully, nothing too tricky. So once that was all installed, it was then kind of thinking, right then, so how we're going to deploy this across the organisation. So we have our external data sets in the software, but then it was kind of like thinking, well, what internal data sets do we want to use as well? And obviously for me, assets was a priority, getting that. But I knew it would also be good if we could supplement it with tenancy information and customer profile information. So I managed to source that. We're lucky we have a centralized data warehouse which pulls in these data sets from our different databases. So what I did was I set up models which would automate updates from our data warehouse into our enterprise geodatabase. So all of that data is just automatically updated on a nightly basis. So I found that, so once I had that, I thought that was a good foundation to build on. So then, like I say, the second year, it was how we're going to get this out across the organisation. So I set up our GIS hub. It's our one-stop shop for all things GIS related. And I used, I think it was the ArcGIS Sites application, which is available in ArcGIS Enterprise. There is something similar in ArcGIS Online. I think it's ArcGIS. I'm saying ArcGIS a lot. I think it's the ArcGIS Hubs application as well. So you've got the option. It essentially allows you to build a website. So the GIS Hub, it contains, we've got a few different tabs on there. One of them contains a dashboard, which essentially allows all of our colleagues to look at our assets at a glance. So it's a number of different tables which shows our main asset attributes. There's a map there, there's a counter. So if anybody across the organisation just wants to answer some simple asset questions, they can use this to quickly get the answers. So if you want to see how many one-bedroom bungalows we've got in Peterlee, for example, it just involves clicking on a few graphs and it gives you the answer there. So obviously that's a good application for all of our colleagues. Then on the other tab we've got is our map gallery tab. And that includes all of our web maps, but it's split out into different levels of access. So we have our organisation-wide applications. We'll have applications which can only be accessed by different teams and directorates, so they're more bespoke. And then we have even tightly more secured applications which can only be accessed by, like project teams and working groups, might contain more sensitive information. But one of our, my pride and joy is our Asset Atlas web map that we've got. That's our main organisation-wide web map that everybody can access. And it includes most of those external data sets that we purchased along with our internal data sets. So yeah, so that's, I think that kind of like covers how I kind of like went from having nothing to then having a corporate-wide solution.
That's really cool. And the fact that you automatically knew, like, we need to focus on addresses, we need the good background mapping, trees are really important for us. Every landlord talks about trees being massive.
Yeah.
And I think the really key one there as well, tying it all in together, is your land reg understanding.
Mm-hmm.
We had your gated partridge and we talked about ownership information on that one, but seeing you going out from the offset, no, this is crucial for us. I think that's really beneficial. And I love the journey you took. The thing that really got me was how you got people involved right from the get-go. You didn't want to tell people what to do. It was, we're doing this together. Let's get the best thing for all of us.
Yeah, that's it. I think because although I said I worked in GIS for a long time, I was new to the housing sector. So it was kind of like, listen to what they want. They're going to be using these applications. How can I make your job easier?
I think that's awesome. So you've been there 4 years now. Can you tell us about some of the interesting projects that you've worked on or you've developed, or a bit of everything, really?
I think we were just saying, wasn't it? It's hard sometimes to think back to remember everything that you've done, but I think one that always sticks out for me is our customer satisfaction surveys that we send out for major works contractors. We use survey 123 for that, so it's a spatial element to it as well. We also capture the location of our customers and where these works are happening. But essentially what that survey does is obviously it asks questions about, how good was this and how good was that. I did mean to say actually how it all works is we have the survey, it's on a postcard, and there's a QR code on the postcard. So when the contractor finishes the job, they hand over this postcard to the customer, and the customer can quickly scan the QR code, and that takes them to the survey. So it basically means that if there's any problems, the customer can quickly fill in the survey. And I think one of the crucial parts that we added to it was we linked in Microsoft Power Automate functionality. So when a customer responds negatively to like an overall satisfaction question, that pings off an email to the relevant people inside Believe. So essentially, if a contractor can just to finish the job, if a customer's not happy, the relevant people who need to know, and they can then start rectifying that. We aim, if we can, if the contractor's still there, to try and get the contractor back within the same day, or if not the next few days, because hopefully they're still on site, so they can go back and rectify that. Prior to doing that, it was kind of, I think the situation was once a quarter, somebody would just select a number of random customers who'd had the jobs done, maybe have 15 customers, just try and gauge how good or bad the contractor had performed. So it could take weeks, if sometimes not months, to pick up on that there had been a problem. But the fact that we're picking up on these problems within a few hours sometimes, and it can be rectified that same day or within a few days, I think it's massively improved our customer satisfaction rating.
That's awesome. The fact that if they fill it out straight away and go, oh, hang on, this this the kitchen cupboard is half broken.
Yeah.
Let's get the contractor back out to repair it. That's awesome. What's the spatial element that you get them to do on the form?
It's essentially we capture the location, so we can just record what works are being done where, and that the information from survey 123 then feeds back to an internal web mapping application. So our project managers can go on and just get that information as well via an online mapping system as well.
Yes.
We can essentially kind of like highlight if we do get a negative response, you can see on the map where bad performance has occurred.
That's awesome. And then the fact, I guess you can do like a heat map visualization showing where your negative interactions are. And if you find they're in a certain location, then it's a contractor or that's
definitely.
Really
if
cool.
We can add a heat map to something, we will. You know, as GIS professionals, we love a heat map.
I was going to say we in GIS love a heat, but that's really, and I love that sort of thinking because that's a real benefit to those residents' lives. Being, like you said, if you did it months down the line, then you've got all that discontentment, all that resentment towards the landlord. But that's blown me away, that one. That's
I think
awesome.
Also as well that I think the number of responses as well, I can't remember, I didn't mean to have a look before I came on here. The fact that we've been doing it over 2 years, we're in the thousands of responses that we're getting. Whereas before we would have just had, like I said, had a handful because of resource wouldn't have been there to allow somebody to ring everybody. So yeah, it's been a really positive experience.
That's awesome. That's another huge metric that they can use towards tenant satisfaction measures and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm liking it. I want to see a demo of it later on. But
no problem.
So, any other interesting projects that you've been working on or looking to develop?
Yeah, I think just a recent one actually, and it's one that I'm still actively working on, is for our urgent support team. They're currently undergoing their domestic abuse reaccreditation. So we thought, well, let's try and set up a web map which would help with that accreditation, but also something that they can use beyond that. So it's only going to be accessible by a small number of people within the team because it does include very sensitive information. We're pulling in data, customer case information, which would include domestic abuse occurrences. It also has ASB information in tenancy breaches. But we're supplementing that information with external data sets. So we have police annual crime information in there so that you can zoom in on a neighbourhood and see what the predominant crime is, see how much crime is happening there. We're also using our address information so that the team can look for where we might need medical resources, where hospitals are. But we're also just like pulling in things like shops, where bus stops are, so we can try and help our customers as much as possible. And I'm going to inbuild in there the find your nearest widget, which basically means you can put a point on a map and it'll pull back all this information for the customer who is within 1 mile, 2 miles, whatever it is, search distance. And we're hoping to, I think, also include some support services as well in there, so we can find the right support for the customer as quickly as possible.
I love that. So you could click on a person's home, they need some immediate assistance.
Sure,
and it will just give everything what's their nearest, like get to this shop and we'll send someone there, or here's your nearest hospital, etc. I think, and also putting on bus stops, we don't often think of having bus stops on a map, what purpose, but if someone's got to escape and leave,
exactly,
where they can get out to. I think that's a really beneficial map, and that will really help those who really need that support.
Yeah, hopefully that's the idea. Just not only just to help our colleagues be more efficient and helpful, just to get the customers the right help as quickly as possible.
That's awesome. So one of the big things which we talk a lot about on this podcast is around return of investment, or ROI. Now, obviously, this is really hard to calculate, but do you know of any areas where you've made any cost savings or even like efficiency improvements for Believe?
And cost savings is always a tricky one for me. It's one thing I think every year I sit down and think I really should look at how the benefits, the value GIS is giving to Believe Housing. But I hold my hands up. I create these applications, I hand them out to the users, and then I very rarely have time to find out exactly how they're benefiting from it. which is it's something that I should do. I know that they are accessing their applications because I can see that they're logging on. So I do know that they are using them. But I just think really that time savings and efficiencies are happening across the organisation every day just by colleagues being able to access the GIS hub, all of the web mapping applications, because GIS acts as it's a central data repository. So the fact that the fact that our users are not just, they're not having to go and source, this database, that database, spreadsheets or different documents to find the answers that they want. Just by being able to open up a web mapping application, clicking a few buttons, they can often find the answers that they need. So I think that's a massive time saving that, again, I haven't thought to quantify, but that is just something that's happening every day.
I think that's the biggest thing. Often we in GIS, we build these applications, we move on to the next thing, we build that, move on, and we're not able to quantify it. And I think that's really common. Yeah. And I've definitely been in the position where someone's gone, well, what benefit does GIS give me as an organization? And then you take them through their daily steps.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, okay, yeah, I couldn't find the information I wanted, but I knew it was on the web map, or I wanted to understand how my neighborhood looks on a map. Yeah. So I was able to get that information all on. Yeah. And you realise actually it does creep up and support them in hours and hours of their work. Especially
yes, I think sorry.
No, you crack on.
I was going to say that our tenancy sustainment team, they use their web map, I can't speak, use their web map for targeted campaigns. So they make sure that the right information is getting to the right customers. So again, that must be an efficiency there within itself. And the fact that our neighbourhood officers, they can use their web map to answer customer queries. So rather than, if a neighbourhood officer is sat in an office and rather than having to travel out 40, 50 minutes drive to visit a customer to answer their query, it might be that they were complaining about, a problem with a footpath outside of their property or a problem with a large tree at the front of the house. They can go on the web map and see, well, I can see we don't own that footpath, it's been adopted, so that can be passed on. And then, I can see that there is a tree in that front garden because, we've got the national tree map, they can see that. So that in itself, not having to drive out just to answer a question that they can do from a desk-based observation, that again, massive time saver.
That's awesome. And I love talking to people about all these savings that people have. Now we're going to talk about the big one, Shine. You are the GIS lead for Shine. Can you tell us about what Shine is, how it began, and a bit more, just tell us how brilliant Shine is, really?
Yeah, I love Shine. I mean, the name in itself is amazing, isn't it? It just makes you smile. It's so Shine, as I don't know if I mentioned this at the start, it stands for Social Housing Innovation Northeast, and it's a great group. We have about 17 members at the moment, and it was set up to help social housing providers to come together and tackle those common problems that we all experience. So it's really to aid collaboration and share knowledge, good and bad. It's all helpful. So it started off in 2023, so it's been going for just 2 years, and that we meet every kind of like 8 weeks or so, but we do tend to get good attendance because people can see the benefits of being able to collaborate. And like I said, I am the GIS lead for Shine. We have a subgroup of Shine called the GIS Club, and it did start off as a bit of a joke, the name, but we have fully embraced it because we are GIS geeks. And it's made up of, it's a fantastic group of people. Shout out to the GIS Club if anybody's listening. We're made up of GIS representatives from our 8 data contributors to OneMap, which I know I'm going to talk about, so I don't want to go into too much detail here. So yeah, that's basically Shine in a nutshell.
I love the fact that it began at Northumbrian Water Innovation Conference.
It did, yeah.
I think that's one of my favourite facts about it.
Yeah, I think they listened. I wasn't a founding member of the group. I'm just, I'm the Shine subgroup person, but it was just, they listened to what people were saying, and it was like, we do need to collaborate more on these issues. We can't work in silos any longer. And I think that's what I'm going to talk about next really helps with that. Yeah,
and so obviously Shine has begun and you've done some amazing things. Further expanding on kind of some of those opportunities and even some of the challenges. What have you found working with Shine, and kind of what are those opportunities and challenges?
Well, the biggest opportunity, which I love to start with and I've got to talk about first, is Shine's OneMap. which I absolutely love. I'm really proud to be part of it, to have developed and lead on it. It's One Map is our shared asset web map for social housing providers in the northeast. We have 8 data contributors at the moment. We went from having initially just like Believe's assets in there, which, like I said at the start, we've got about 18,500 assets. We now have over 133,000 assets from our different data contributors, and that expands all the way from the Scottish borders now, and we say the northeast, but we do now go into North Yorkshire, so we expand all the way down to the River Humber, really. So that's our coverage area that we've got. In One Map, it brings in not just our assets, it also brings in other external data sets as well. I think it's one good example of why One Map is great to facilitate collaboration is there's an area in Thornaby, which is kind of to the southwest of Middlesbrough. And with this one location, there's 3 different housing associations all operating within that neighbourhood. And I think we all tend to do it as housing associations, is that we can kind of like impose these invisible boundaries in neighbourhoods depending on where our assets are, and it means nothing to our residents or customers who live in these locations. They don't know that you're only going to look after that part of the street, not that part of the street. So in Thornaby, like I say, you can see on One Map where all of these assets are, because I think it's a powerful tool, just being able to see where your neighbouring housing associations assets are. It opens up the doors for loads of different opportunities for collaboration, things like major works. If you know as a housing association you're going to be replacing, say, roofs or something in a street in this location, you can go onto One Map and say, well, who else has got properties on that street? Because you can also see the age of the properties. So you're going to know, well, if our houses need roof replacements, then the properties over the road owned by that other housing association are also going to need the roof replacement. So it means you can come together on that. And then that has a knock-on effect with procurement, because you could come together and order, more things in bulk, so get things cheaper. So just like so many different opportunities, really. But then I think the challenges have been creating One Map, which I think it was the hardest part. It was rather than just about the software. I think it was very different challenges. But as far as software is concerned, we went with ArcGIS on the online platform because our original data contributors, most people were using ArcGIS online. So we went with that for the software. And then it was, well, what application are we going to use? So we decided to go with Experience Builder, because I think that's one of the newer applications. And it allowed us to, include the functionality that we wanted, to build the app and design it how we wanted it, so we can include our own branding. We've included different charts and analytics and widgets to make it as user-friendly as possible. So that was a great tool that we could use for that. And then I think the third challenge around the software was access. How were people going to be able to access the application? So we decided to use the partner collaboration setting within ArcGIS Online, and that allowed our Shine ArcGIS Online account to speak to our data contributors' ArcGIS Online account, so we could talk to each other, and it meant that we could share data a lot easier. And then, so once we'd sorted that out, it was the data challenges, which, that was hard. It was what internal data sets we were going to use from our data contributors. So we used, again, like what I said, with Believe Housing, assets were our main one. We also pulled in EPC information. So then again, as a collaborative opportunity, we could look to see where other housing associations had properties which were C and below. That was an opportunity to come together to look at that, for warm homes retrofitting. And then we also pulled in ASB information, and we do have some damp and mould in there. But the challenge was data standardization. We all capture the same information, but how that's stored varies quite differently. So we've kind of like worked out, well, let's just pull together just some simple data templates for each of our main each of our main data sets that we were using. So we have a template which just shows which fields that we want and which data goes in there, and then the data type, and that gave us a good kind of like platform to build on. It makes it a lot easier further down the line as well to symbolize that information when you have that data standardized. So that was just a few of the different challenges that we had to overcome.
I think the big one that hits home for me is that data standardization across organizations. Everyone thinks, and in all honesty, for their respective businesses, they are doing things logically. As soon as you try and come together for collaboration, that's where those challenges just automatically just go greater.
Yeah.
There was something I was going to talk about as well, which I can't remember about. But I think, yeah, the fact that you've got 133,000 homes on one map, I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other one, I know what I was going to talk about now. It was about the residents on a road with multiple housing providers. And I've been in this position where you've got your residents going, well, hang on, such and such down the road from me, they're getting a whole new kitchen done. All these
Yeah.
houses were built at one time. Why aren't I getting a new kitchen? I haven't had one
Yeah.
in 20 years. And
Yeah.
when you finally understand the kind of nature of their query and the house they're talking about, you realize it is another organization doing that.
Mhm.
Because, yeah, like you said, these people don't live in isolated bubbles of landlords. They live all
No, no.
together in one area.
Yeah,
I
I think
think,
it's a lot less intrusive as well, a lot less intrusive if you can go in and just kind of like blitz a whole area rather than doing it, we'll do this side of the street, this part of the year, and then another organisation comes in and does that half of the street, another half of the year. It's just massive disruption for the people who are living there. So hopefully that kind of like negates all of that.
so when I first heard about one map I was going to say years ago, but a while ago, I think probably about 12 months ago, maybe now, I realized how amazing it is and what great benefit it would bring. So, I mean, I'm just small part in the housing community, and from what I've heard, one map is being really well received, especially when you won an innovation award.
Oh yeah.
What kind of feedback have you been receiving from your fellow Shine members on it?
Yeah, well, thankfully, whenever I seem to go to the different kind of like groups, I always get a really positive feedback after I've given the demo. I think people just get it and see like, oh yeah, I can see the benefits of being able to see where my neighbouring housing association is. And I think the fact as well that we often get approached by other social housing provider groups, I think that speaks volumes because they're saying, oh, we want to be a part of this. We want to be able to get the efficiencies that we can see in the collaboration opportunities from this map. One example was HENI, which stands for Housing Employability Network Northeast. And they came to us shortly after we launched, which I don't know if I mentioned previously when I was talking about it. We launched in June of this year. So we haven't been going long. It took us a year to build the application, but we've only been going for a few months. But Henny said, could we use one map to help them with, I think it was a bid application they were looking to submit to get money to support economically inactive residents in the Northeast. So they said, could we use one map and the data that's in there to kind of like identify focus areas for the bid? So I was like, yeah, let's see what we've got. And we used, things like female population data from the Office for National Statistics. We used the IMD information, index of multiple deprivation, including employment, income, and health. So we used all of that along with their asset information for all of their group members. And we were able to identify 3 locations across the Northeast that they could include in their bid. So they really felt like using one map gave them a unique selling point for their bid. And it was all done through like data-driven techniques, not just best guesstimates of where the money could be allocated. So yeah, that was a really positive one.
I mean, that's awesome to hear, such positive feedback from it, and other groups wanting to join in or kind of mirror what you're doing. I mean, what do they say? It's essentially copying is the most sincerest form of flattery. Or something. Like if
I
other
think
groups
we use a term in Shine. It's something like, I think it's steal with pride. And I think that's
I like
quite a good one. I can't claim that, but we do use it.
So kind of a penultimate question so one map you've done some really cool things with. Have you got anything in your pipeline for what you're going to do over the next 12 to 18 months or so with it?
Yeah, it's an ever-evolving beast, really. We don't want it to let it, we don't want anyone to become complacent with it. So we just want it to evolve all the time. So we will be listening to our users to see what other data sets that they want in there to help them with their activities. That's the whole point. But I think ultimately, and the main thing is that we want to keep on attracting new data contributors, because the more gaps we can fill in on the map, the more valuable a resource it is. So that's the main thing we want to focus on, getting more data in there.
No. So, and then we've come to our final question, which is, if you had an unlimited budget, what would you do with it?
Oh, right. Well, I'll split it into 2 parts then. I think for one map, if we could get more resources, that would be amazing, because we all basically, the GIS Club, the fabulous GIS Club, everybody submits their time for one map and contributes alongside their role. So we're often quite resource limited in the amount of time we can spend on this. So I think having, more people to be able to help, that would be amazing, because some of our data contributors as well, their assets are not restrained within the Northeast. They might be nationally based. So I think being able to expand one map nationally, you've got to think big. That would be amazing. And then I think for the Lead as well, I would love to explore the idea of having a proper digital twin. And I use the word proper because our asset atlas, I kind of pretend that that's a digital twin, and that's what I say to people. But it's not, it's just a 2D map. I mean, it's a start, don't get me wrong. But I think being able to explore our properties and our neighbourhoods in a real immersive 3D experience, it would be revolutionary, it would be game changing, really. So I think that's the two areas I would like to explore.
Well, you know what? I do want to do an episode on digital twins and everything.
Oh,
Maybe we'll do like a collab one and we get a few people in to chat about it. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna
absolutely fascinating.
nerd out about it too much. But Lynsey, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely brilliant having you on and chatting about all the brilliant work you've been doing. If anyone who's listened wishes to get in touch, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, please get in touch with me via my email, which I don't know, is that something that you're including on this, Chris?
I can put it at the bottom of the description if you'd like.
Yeah, my email is lynsey.darby@believehousing.co.uk. We also have a Shine LinkedIn page. If you want to find out more about Shine and become part of one map, that would be amazing. Check out the Shine LinkedIn page. There's information on there of how you can get in touch with us as well.
Oh, Lynsey, thank you so much. It's been amazing having you on. And to those of you who've been listening, thank you so much for joining us today. If you'd like to be involved in the podcast, please feel free to get in touch. Find us either on our LinkedIn page or our website of www.housinggeospatial.co.uk. Lynsey, thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris. It's been fantastic.
And to everyone else, have a good day. Bye.
Bye.